Delighted to say we can now speak to another former ex-England international. Gary Neville is with us. Hello, Gary. We've all had a chance to sleep on it now and mull it over a little bit. What's your reaction to last night's England performance?
Yeah, I think just same as it was last night, that these lads have been outstanding for a number of years, and the way in which Gareth moulded them into a team in the last few tournaments has been exceptional. And just for the first time, I think, for a few tournaments, there is an embarrassment of riches in talent, but that has created an imbalance, along with obviously a couple of injuries in key positions. I think not having a left back as well as Kieran Trippier is sort of getting on with doing his job there and doing it quite well. Not having a balance at left back. I don't think we've got a balance in midfield, and we haven't got the right balance up front yet in respect of what's happening there, whether it be the right player to play alongside Phil Foden, the right players to run past Harry Kane. And I think Gareth Southgate, as much as he would have liked to have tried to be stable and continuous in his selection through this group to not create what would be a sense of panic, I think he is going to have to interfere with the team selection and potential system as well, because I think we've seen now that in the first game, that would definitely can be put down to first game of any tournament is tough. Getting over the line is really important, but I think the idea that then it becomes a pattern in the second game means that you do have to act, because I don't think it will end well if we continue to play as we are with the same team. It's a bit of a concern that the performance levels and the standards that they've set themselves over the last few years are obviously becoming something that we're using against them now, because it's unusual to see them as such a what would be, I don't know how you describe the performance. It was lacking in balance. It was lacking in energy. And the big thing is obviously the control of the game. And that's been a challenge for England teams over 20, 30 years that I've been part of. But actually this team, I think, have taken control of games and look positive. They don't look that way in this tournament up to now, and that's going to need to be dealt with.
The trend so far that we've seen from England, Gary, is that they score a goal, they go ahead, and then they drop off. There was a graphic shown on the TV last night that before the goal and after the goal, they were about 10 yards deeper. Why is that happening?
I wish I had the answer to that, because that happened to me and teams that I was part of, or was part of the coaching team in for 8 tournaments, where we found ourselves going back into what's now described as a low block, basically sitting at the edge of your box, parking the bus, thinking that we would get through games and that we could keep a clean sheet, relying upon a counter-attack and moments to be able to go and move forward. I genuinely believe over these last 3 tournaments that this team and this manager that we've got, Gareth Southgate, have broken that mould, and that they've been positive and that they've dominated games at times, accepting that they've been driven back. Obviously against Italy in the final, they scored a goal and then were driven back. But that can happen sometimes in matches, but it wouldn't normally happen in the games that we've seen, the opponents that we've seen in the first 2 games. So I would ordinarily say with England teams, it's mentality, because that's what I think we've experienced over a number of years. 1 second, I've got a fire engine or something outside. I would ordinarily say it's mentality, lack of ability with coaching, lack of technical ability with players to be able to get on the half turn and sort of get combinations built up through the back, and bravery. But with this team, they have proven that they can do those things. So I'm not quite sure why we've regressed. And that's why I think Gareth is going to have to interfere with it and do something quite stark than what he's done from what he would ordinarily want to do, having obviously played 2 matches in the tournament.
I want to pick up on a couple of things that Southgate said last night. He described the Trent Alexander-Arnold situation playing in midfield as an experiment. How do you assess the way that experiment has gone?
I was surprised that he used the word experiment. I was also surprised he referred to Calvin Phillips. I mean, we've referred to him in the last couple of weeks, but talking about a player that's not played for a couple of years hardly, that's not been in the best of form, and also the talent of the players that are currently there, I don't think will particularly go down well with the other players in the group. And, you've got Kobbie Mainoo there, you've got Wharton, Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'm torn in some ways because I do believe we've got a generational talent. We've got a world-class player, and that England should be finding a way to make it work for him. I do believe the reason that Trent Alexander-Arnold is not a midfield player for his club, and that hasn't been a midfield player for England for the last 5 years, is because he hasn't got the talent to play in midfield. That's the reason we're called fullbacks. If you're a fullback, it's because you've ordinarily been moved back from being a winger or a midfield player, and you've not been good enough to receive the ball on the half turn and have the subtlety in your game and the ability and awareness to look over your shoulder and know where you are. It's a very difficult position to play. It's different than fullback. And what Trent does for Liverpool, where he comes in from midfield and comes onto the game and he's facing the game, is perfect. But actually, in international football, which is more difficult to play, I think, than club football because of the familiarity or lack of familiarity we have with the players. You don't play as often with them. I think it's doubly difficult. I think that 2 games in now, I just saw Trent's face when he was walking off last night. There was a sort of a resigned look on his face and a feeling of real disappointment. And I think probably that will be the last we see of it. I actually don't think it's just down to him, though. I think the balance of the whole team in terms of how we play isn't right. And it wouldn't be fair just to say that the Trent Alexander-Arnold experiment, as Gareth called it, is the reason for how we played in the last 2 games.
Yeah, to pick up on the other comment that you actually alluded to, the comment that England don't have a natural replacement for Calvin Phillips, Southgate said. He's got 2 players in his squad. They're very young, Adam Wharton, Kobbie Mainoo. Do they not fit that bill?
Slightly different, but they play the position. They know how to play the role. Kobbie Mainoo can get on the ball on the half turn. Wharton can play. They both can play, but they're inexperienced at this level. And I think, like I said, we all knew what Gareth was saying. Let's be clear. Let's not sort of, if you like, jump on it. And I was surprised he said it, and I was surprised he referred to it. But it's also something that I think we all understand, that balancing off in midfield in a 2 is really important, and understanding each other. And Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice had built a relationship that was successful for England and worked well. And it provided a platform and a base for the team to be able to go and attack with confidence, and they could sustain attacks. We haven't got that anymore. Jordan Henderson obviously isn't there, who potentially could sort of, if you like, he would play further forward, but he could drop back in and play that role alongside Declan Rice. I've mentioned enough times now about Declan Rice himself. I don't think it's ideal for him to be sat back there and receive the ball with his back to play. So I think we've got a situation now whereby I would expect to see Kobbie Mainoo or Wharton come into the team, just because of their natural ability in that position to get the ball off the back 4 and get us playing. Every great team, and I've said this I don't know how many times, the reason I named Paul Scholes as the best player that I ever played with is because he got us playing. And if you're going to win trophies, and you're going to win trophies regularly, which is what we did, you need someone who can do that on a regular basis. You need to control football matches. And control football matches, yes, when you're drawing. Control football matches when you're losing. But importantly, control football matches when you're winning, and control football matches in the opposition half of the pitch. And that's what these types of players enable you to do, because they're brave enough to take the ball and move you up the pitch. And we haven't got that at this moment in time.
Yeah, so it's not quite clicking. It's not completely negative. Top of the group, 4 points. We'll go through with a point against Slovenia on Tuesday. But what changes would you want to see for that game, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, on the group position, we should put this into perspective. There are many times, I mean, Euro 96, which was deemed a great tournament for England, we drew our first game against Switzerland and were slightly fortunate in the end to beat Scotland in the second game. So this is not unusual, by the way, for England to have a difficult time in the first couple of games of a tournament. I just think this group have set themselves such high standards that the warning signs and the problems that England have had in tournaments where it's not gone as well, I think are actually appearing here. And that's why I'm slightly more concerned. For the first time, we're all asking the questions, well, how would you get him in? Where would you play him? And Gareth's never really had that in the last 4 or 5 years. There've been bits of it, but he's never had it with this talent of player. You know, where'd you get Palmer in? Where'd you get Bellingham Foden in the same team, and Trent Alexander-Arnold? And how'd you get Saka in alongside? It's like an embarrassment of riches. And what I would like to see on Tuesday is us, if you like, somehow forget about reputation, forget about talent, and pick a team that's balanced, that actually can go out there, that actually are in good form and good fitness. I think there are a couple of them actually playing at the moment that don't look like they're actually sharp. And get the best players out there on the pitch in respect to the team rather than the individuals. And Gareth's always done that really well. So this is not me suggesting that Gareth's never done that before. He's been probably the best at it in the last 50, 60, 70 years. He's ignored whether you play for Aston Villa or Manchester United or Manchester City or Southampton. You know, he's basically picked you based upon what you do. And he's proven that with this squad. And I think he's going to have to upset a couple of the big names. And I think that started last night by him taking off 3 big names all at once in Saka, Foden and Kane. That was a big move by Gareth. That was him, stood on the touchline, speaking to Steve Holland and saying, I'm going to have to do something to interfere with this because this is not right and I need to change it. And I think those changes will move into Tuesday. What he will specifically do, I do think if Luke Shaw is semi-fit, and I'm saying semi-fit, then we have to try and get him in at left back because of the fact that the balance, not because Kieran Trippier is playing badly. I don't know if he is fit, Luke Shaw. If he's not, then obviously that's gone. I do think we have to now change the midfield. I really like Conor Gallagher, but I think actually the role that Conor Gallagher has been brought in to do last night is the role that Declan Rice plays best, where he can run onto the game and press high. And Conor Gallagher does that really well. He dispossesses people high up the pitch. But I'd like to see Mainu or Wharton come in, probably play a little bit deeper and let Rice be that one that can maraud forward a little bit. But then also he's got the power and strength and energy to get back in. Bellingham will obviously stay in the team. The big question mark is obviously around Phil Foden. And there's something there's something that instinctively inside me feels very uncomfortable leaving Phil Foden out of an England team, purely because if we can't make Phil Foden and Trent Alexander-Arnold international football players for England, then we've got a real problem. And other nations wouldn't do that. And we would regret it in years, if you like, to come. So I don't know whether there's a change of system to get them all in. Whether that's to go 3 at the back to get Trent Alexander-Arnold in at right wing back, to do something quite stark, and then that allows maybe to have a little bit less protection in midfield because you've got 3 at the back, and then you've got maybe Declan Rice in front, with Mainu or something like that. We did that in the Euros against Italy, but at the moment, I was on telly with Roy Keane and Ian Wright last night, and we were trying to write the England team down for Tuesday, and even we were finding it difficult. And it takes me back to 2004 when we had Scholes, Lampard, Gerrard, Beckham, and we were trying to squeeze them in to this midfield with balance, and it was impossible to try and get them in. So you're then left with the situation: do you play them out of position or do you upset one of them? And I think that's where Gareth's going to be at.
One name that we've not mentioned is the captain, Harry Kane. He played up front, he scored the goal, but then he was dropping deep, gave the ball away for the Denmark goal. Is he an auto starter without doubt?
I think he's an automatic starter for Gareth. It would be a huge call bringing him off last night was a huge call. I think the only other time he's ever done that in a meaningful game was against Scotland in the Euros a few years ago at Wembley. So it's unusual for Gareth to take off Harry Kane when we need a goal. So what he did last night was already a sort of rare move. Leaving him on the bench, though, is going to a different level. And I don't think that'll happen.